My name's Nina Zoccali. I'm a chef and owner of the restaurant Penalina and La Rosa, the Strand, both restaurants in the Strand Arcade. They're Italian restaurants. My background's Italian and I've been cooking for about 23 years and been in the hospitality industry for about 27 years. My parents took us to restaurants. They weren't necessarily expensive restaurants, but we used to go quite a bit, and I really loved the whole concept of the restaurant. And Dad was an Italian migrant, so he would grow everything in the garden. So we had a strong relationship with produce all of our lives, and then we'd enjoy going to restaurants as well. So it was like I got a bit of exposure to both sides of what goes into a restaurant from an early age. I think probably the biggest lesson, or the biggest thing that's really for me that stands out, is to be consistent. It's really, really important. And early in my cooking career, I had some mentors that had been associated with the restaurant industry for quite a long time, and they drummed into me from an early age, from that very early period, that it's really important to be consistent no matter what you do. It's no good at being amazing one day and then ordinary the next, because you'll lose clientele that way. So it's really, really important. I think my training was a little bit different. I actually didn't do an apprenticeship. I went to enrol to do one. I was sort of a self-taught cook because I did a university degree before I really embarked on a career in cooking. And so for me, I'd put a lot of work in though, and I really, there was a lot of real on-the-job training in good restaurants and hard kitchens. And I also read incessantly, like I read a lot and I researched a lot, because if you don't come through a traditional way, sometimes I think you feel that you need to actually know more. And so I guess for me the biggest thing was I went to try and enrol to do an apprenticeship, and I was a bit older, so it would have been probably more a mature age thing. And they did an assessment of me and said that they felt that my standard skills were of an adequate level to be considered a chef, so I got awarded my trade papers. So for me that was a very big achievement, because it kind of acknowledged a lot of work that I'd actually done to that point in time. It sounds funny because it shouldn't probably really matter, but it did matter to me. And I think that for apprentices to actually see it through and get a qualification, whether you stay in cooking or you don't, I think is a really great thing to do. I think the biggest challenge for me was that I kind of went through the hard yards at a bit of an older age, because I did university studies first, and then I worked part-time in hospitality, but in bars before I really worked in the kitchen. And I really started washing dishes, believe it or not. And so the hardest thing for me, I think, was that I was doing it a bit older, and I copped a bit of flack from some of the young guys saying, you're really doing this like not an easy road. I wasn't that old either. I was probably 27, 28 when I was sort of, working at lower levels in kitchens here in Sydney, and come from WA before that. I'd actually owned a restaurant before that, but I kind of had to come to Sydney and sort of start on the bottom rung, because I had some really strong contacts in Sydney, but I hadn't had a track record of working here. So that was probably the hardest thing, was really there was a few years there where I really had to just put my head down and really focus on getting time under my belt before I could really advance and then I went very quickly. I went into much higher positions and pretty high profile positions pretty quickly, but there was a phase there where it was really quite difficult, and I didn't agree with a lot of the philosophy of how kitchens were run in the higher end restaurants in terms of administration, in terms of sort of culture. So I knew how I felt about things and how I wanted to run things when I was in charge of a business or a kitchen. And so for me it was like there's a certain period where you just sort of had to live through stuff and do your time, and so that was the most challenging bit for me. I think the world's changed a lot in terms of what goes on inside of kitchens, and it's changed probably globally. You know, they used to be quite draconian places where, you know, they were pretty abusive, and it's a high stress environment, and you can use the high stress environment as an excuse for bad behaviour, but it's not really an excuse. And I think it boils down to whether the kitchen's well run or not. So the goal is really to reduce the stress by having management systems and very clear procedures in place, and that takes a lot of the stress out, because you don't deal with as many things going wrong if it's run like that. You know, I mean, everybody loses it at some stage in a busy hot kitchen, and that's normal. I guess if it's happening every day, that's a problem. And look, I think you need to be passionate if you're going to do this in this industry, but you also need the capability of doing it in a really disciplined way, in a way. So having a really cool head and thinking on your feet really quickly is really, really important. Full restaurant with very happy people. That's it. That's really what you're there for. You know, like for me, it's you know, there's so much that goes into actually creating a great restaurant, and there's so much that goes into creating a great food, and I think the whole lot of it, you know, and you should indulge your passions, you should indulge your individuality in what you're doing. It's really, really important, and that's creativity, and that's a compelling reason for why people want to eat in your venue. But once you're within that framework, you've really got to focus on your client, and you've got to focus on what's really working for them, because it's a relationship you build with your clientele, and they're very much what you're there for. And a lot of people think it's a statement that they want to make about what they do, and that's valid, but it's not just a box that's locked off and that's how it is, because most times that won't work. I've been pretty focused on what I wanted to do. I've been very focused, and I think there's a real commitment to quality with what we do, in terms of you really need to deliver on your promise, and you really need to, you need to be very, very intelligent about how you're going to do things, but you've really got to, if you're not kind of blowing away the client in some way, shape or form, or the diner, then, if they're not, to me, if they say, oh, that was really nice, that's a fail. If they're not saying this is amazing, if you're not getting a lot of the amazing feedback, then you're really in trouble, because the environment's very, very competitive. Australia's one of the best restaurant scenes in the world, and if you're not really, really producing quality, then you're in trouble. So I think from my side, that's something that all good chefs constantly come back to, so I think being focused on the client and really on quality and innovation, and then really I'll come back to the point around consistency. Really, really important. It's the one thing that will kill your business, kill your career, is if you're not consistent in what you do. Okay, so the one advice I give myself is probably the advice that I did give myself, which is just to really keep going. So, you need to constantly remind yourself that you're going to get to your next milestone, and keep coming back to, you've got to support yourself in a way, because, anything of values usually takes focus and tenacity, and so that was really it. I think I wouldn't really change much of what I've done. I think, it's been, I don't know, I don't mind work, so it doesn't really bother me to do that hard yards, but, and just really, just keep focused on what you want to do. You will get there if you really want to. We do stuff that's probably unique, a few different things. Olive oil is one that I talk about a bit, and it definitely is an area that we are quite unique. We I don't think there's anywhere else in Australia that treats olive oil like we do, and I've travelled extensively in Italy and not seen anything there either. So we feature a range of olive oils, very boutique, very high quality olive oils from around Australia. I have quite unique access to some of Australia's best olive oils as well for blending for our own Pendolino blend, the Fruttato Allegro blend, and so olive oil is really big, and it's big because olive oil is a cornerstone of Italian cooking. We're the restaurants are Italian, so for us it's really important that we, and Italian cuisine, like a lot of cuisines, stands up largely on the quality of the produce being used. So olive oil was something that I naturally got more and more interested in, and to the point now it's probably a bit of an obsession. But it's so that's the olive oil is definitely something quite unique we do. We also pasta, so we've got a little dedicated pasta kitchen where we make all the pasta ourselves. So all our pasta is handmade, and we do. Fresh pasta is a really beautiful thing, and dried pasta is something that is normally more an industrial thing, but we have a facility to make fresh and dried, which is quite unique. Normally, most good quality restaurants, Italian restaurants, will make fresh pasta and buy dried pasta in. They're different eating experiences, but we've got to do the whole lot under that. So the amount of pastas that we do and the different sorts of pastas is probably pretty unique. Really one of the cornerstones of Italian cooking is olive oil, so that's really why we use it. And then the more I've gotten into it, like I've travelled to Italy and I spent time with the Masteri Oleari in Italy, which is like an olive oil masters guild, and I've visited producers over there, and I've been heavily involved in judging in Australia for about 10 years now, and but the quality of the oils in Australia are amazing, and it's a cornerstone of Italian cooking, and it's very, very good for you from a health perspective, and so we use oils like a seasoning more than like a cooking medium. So we use it as a cooking medium, but we finish a lot of our dishes and we list each of the oils on our menu. Like you might pair wine, we do it with oils on different dishes, and we list them on the menu. So that's just a really beautiful ingredient to use, and it's become a ritual every year now. We go sort of interstate and judge different shows, and so we're across the best oils in Australia every year, which is it's like the new vintages of wine. Like it's exciting because it changes every year. They're artisanal products, and you kind of need to view every year. And there's a group of people that are that have been doing this for a long time as well, that are producers, and some of them are scientists, and so it's kind of it's a whole world, another world of understanding around oils, and I guess I'm pretty entrenched in that world now. Well, the biggest challenge I would suggest from an apprentice's side is to really understand that the image portrayed by being a chef on television is really not the reality in the workplace. And I think a lot of them know that anyway, but they need to really understand that all those people that are on television that are celebrity chefs and very famous, they've done these hard yards anyway. So the biggest challenge is really to work out whether it's really what you want to do, and then to really be focused and tenacious in a way, have a degree of tenacity to be able to go, because I think if you're really into it, you're thinking ahead, and you're thinking about where you want to be and where you want to go. You got to ask yourself 3 questions, I think, and really. So, firstly, are you passionate about it? Because if you're not really passionate about it, I think everybody. There's this thing where if you follow your passion and everything will sort itself out. I don't actually agree with that. I think that you need to be passionate about whatever you do, but then you need to say, am I going to be good at this, or am I going to be good enough at this? Because if you're not, well, maybe it's just a hobby. Maybe cooking's your hobby. But if you think you can be pretty good at it, and your personality is really very much has you've got a set of traits that are in alignment with this, then if you're passionate, you're confident that you could be pretty good at it. Then the third thing is, do you see yourself in a situation where financially it's going to be where you want to go to? Is that important to you? and how would this job, this industry do that for you? And then if you can answer those all in the affirmative and you really enjoy it, I think then you must do it. I think there's been a process of people leading more and more and more out of home for a long time in the developed world. So you've got two parents working full time, and people, they don't want to come home and cook every night of the week. So people, even if it's a cheaper meal, let's say, or experience, there's just so much more as a category. It's really growing. So there's lots of opportunities in the future at all levels of food service industry for the next generation of apprentices, really.